Hello, it's Amber here. It's just going to be me right now because it is freakishly early on the West Coast where Noel is. But I wanted to do the recap to last Thursday's game here in a video form because I think a lot of people tend to like this format a little better. And I'll talk a little bit about the clues and in a blind tasting, what are some things that you should be thinking about with that. So the wine, I did a post on it to reveal and give shout outs to the folks that got it from last Thursday was Tokaji on that from the ferment grape. So this is one that does tend to pop up quite a bit on the WSET diploma exams for D3. In fact, actually I got my little list here, kind of pulled from different internet sources from previous exam wines. Last time was October 2019, and then 2017, 2014, 2011, 2008, and it always shows up in the mixed bag, which makes sense because when you look at the diploma text, Tokaji is it for Hungary. And so there's no other grapes, no other ferment that's considered like a blind tasting benchmark elsewhere in the world, so it wouldn't show up on a grape flight. So again, that makes sense. If you're on your very last flight for the diploma and you've got a sweet wine that's got some botrytis to it, Tokaji could definitely be in the running. Other laterals that folks did as guesses, which make tons of sense, are Sauternes, another one that has a fair amount of botrytis to it, and Riesling, which could have botrytis in Alsace. You got your SGNs, and of course in Germany. So that's definitely some good guesses there. But let's go through the clues and kind of see what might have steered us more towards Tokaji versus those others. So clue review. Clue 1, dried apricot. Was very deliberate in selecting dried apricot. So as soon as you start picking up dried fruit, some of the things, botrytis, late harvest wines, those should be some of the things that you're thinking about, things that would desiccate the grape. Dried mangoes. So I have a dried stone fruit with the apricot, and then I also have a tropical fruit. So that might get you thinking a little bit more towards a warmer climate, perhaps. Peaches, and this was one that I thought was a really fun clue that I found, was it had fresh peaches, and then it had dried peaches inside a plastic container. And I loved that because one of the things that just totally rocked my world when I was doing blind tasting studies, Nick Jackson, he wrote this awesome book, but he also did a really great series of webinars. And one of his webinars was on wines that had botrytis. And something he said there really clicked, that the way that botrytis, that fungus, changes the nature of the fruit, it's almost like you're sensing the fruit through plastic saran wrap. And it really clicked on me when get a wine that's got some sweetness, like a regular late harvest wine, especially like some of the New World examples that probably won't have any botrytis, and then compare it towards a wine that has a lot of botrytis. And you do get that sense of, okay, here's the fruit, but there is this like plasticiness from it. It's not the full vibrancy of that freshness of fruit. There's something covering it, obscure. And that is the nature of botrytis. And so if you have the time to do that tasting before your exam, a wine that doesn't have botrytis, same variety that does have botrytis, it really is eye-opening. And Corvin is your best friend when it comes to these sweet wines because like my wife and I like having a little bit every now and then, but it's going to take us a little while to finish this bottle. So Corvin is your friend. Also repour. I love the little repour savors. Those are another fun one. So yeah, that was clue 3. Fresh peaches. So a little bit of freshness, a little brightness, something that might indicate acidity when you're having it in context with dried fruit as well. But I also wanted the dried peaches there and then the plastic. The 4th clue was candied orange peel. So you got that citrus, that zest. A little bit of phenolics from a peel aspect of it. Candied, got some sweetness. You have a wine that's got botrytis. There's some things that are ringing in your brain before you even taste it. This is probably going to be a little sweet. And that candied nature of the fruit is one of those. But that picture also had some fresh oranges. So again, dried, a little bit of freshness, but mostly dried fruit. Then honeycomb. So honey, that sweetness, but also a little bit of earthiness with that comb. And then the big, big clue for a lot of folks with botrytis, ginger. Saffron's another one that pops up, but ginger, that little spiciness that comes from botrytis is another favorite. In that picture, I also picked that one because it had some lemon in it, so a little bit more citrus. So citrus, stone fruit, and a little bit of tropical. Not as much. Mango was the kind of the big one that popped up with tropical. It's mostly that stone and citrus. So if you kind of take that spectrum of fruit We're not thinking of something super warm and super tropical, but a little bit, that moderate, so a little bit warm. So the area around Tokai, continental climate in Hungary, that fits, is that moderate climate. Alsace would certainly fit. With some of the cooler areas of Germany, you may expect a little bit more tree fruit, a little bit cooler pop out, but that's not beyond the realm. With Sauternes in Bordeaux, with that maritime climate, a little further south, you get a lot more tropical fruits that tend to pop out in Sauternes. Pineapple, melon, more, and the mango certainly does pop out, so you got that cross there. But I would be a little skeptical with this slate of clues, with those fruits, that there wasn't more tropical. Because with Sauternes can be very tropical. So that was the flavor and aroma clues. Structure clues. Medium to deep gold. So this is a big one here. Because when you think about botrytis and think about what it does to the grapes on the vine, it just sucks out the water from it, shrivels it up. That is kind of an oxidizing action. Basically, oxidation is happening there on the vine as it hangs so long on there. So that oxidizing nature is going to impact the color. And that's why you do tend, with these botrytis wines, and this is a 2013, so it has a little bit of age, but even young Tokais that's on release will usually have a little bit of color. It's very, very rare to find a wine with full botrytis that is pale on it. You'll sometimes see that with wines that have a mix of fruit that has a lot of botrytis and some clean fruit. For instance, Sauternes. You very much could get a pale young Sauternes because Sauternes doesn't have to be 100% botrytis. In fact, it usually isn't. With most Sauternes, they do a mix of fruit. Some clean fruit, some partial botrytis, and some fully botrytis. That is a key nature of Sauternes to keep in mind. Same thing when you get into some of the Rieslings. If you have your Spätlesens, your Auslesens, they might just have a little bit of botrytis on it. It's not till you get to your Baron Auslesens, and then when you get your TBAs, the Trockenbeeren, those are the individual dried berries, that's when you're getting the full botrytis. But those other ones, a mix. So you could have some paler colors there. But Tokaji Aszú, this is like the Trockenbeeren Auslesens. It's like the SGNs. It has to be full botrytis. It has to pick those individual little shriveled berries. So you're going to get that full oxidizing effect. So expect a little bit of a deeper color with Tokai. Then aromas, pronounced plus. I mean, there's a lot going on in the glass. For these games, I try to limit it to 5 to 6 clues for flavors and aromas, but you can go on so much more of the spice, more floral notes that often pop out, a lot more fruit. So, I mean, if this wine is screaming to you out of the glass, it's probably going to be a very good quality wine. And botrytis is one of the things that's going to be screaming at you with all those different notes. Sweet, definitely sweet. The minimum residual sugar for Aszú is 120 grams. And that is going to be noticeably sweet. And to put that in context with Sauternes, which was, again, a popular lateral, most Sauternes, I mean, it can certainly go up to 120, but most, because it is that mix of botrytis and even some clean fruit, they're more in the 80 to 100 grams per liter range. And then again, some of them can go up to 120. The alcohol level on those, which actually I'll just jump to the alcohol here. Alcohol and Sauternes are going to be higher. Sauternes are usually at least a 13 and a half. They go up to over 14 easily because of that mix of fruit. And it's not fermented as much it's fermented a little bit more, so you get more alcohol and you have not as much residual sugar compared to Tokai, which has way more residual sugar and is usually low, possibly medium. Like this particular one here is 11%, and that's really common. 10% is common, 10.5. So low alcohol is a good trademark for Tokai compared to Sauternes, which you usually will get a little bit more, you feel a little bit more alcohol with Sauternes. Acid, high. Big high on that. I mean, that's the nature of the grape ferment. It loves its acid, it holds on to acid, and makes it so beautiful with balancing that really high sugar. That's obviously, you're going to expect that in Riesling with the high, so it's a good lateral. With Sauternes, certainly can be high, but keep in mind, Sauternes, the grapes, Semillon by its nature is not a high acid grape. In Australia, in the Hunter Valley, they make it high acid by picking it so early, which is the complete opposite of what you'd be doing if in Sauternes. So Semillon's not going to be giving you a lot of acid. Sauvignon Blanc will give you some acid, but Sauvignon Blanc's usually not the majority component of Sauternes. So if you get a Sauterne that's only like medium plus acid, that's not going to be unusual. So just keep that in mind. And oh yes, it is the one I'm referencing here is 5 Putinose. Low to medium alcohol, full bodied, all that botrytis, all that sugar, all that glycerol, it really, really fills your mouth. And this is another thing that I find is actually a good contrast compared to Sauternes, because Sauternes will have that mix again. So it's not as much glycerol, not as much sugar. So Sauternes kind of feels surprisingly featherweight and light and elegant for such a sweet wine. And this really hit home for me. I had the opportunity to visit Bordeaux. My wife and I, we went to a restaurant, and at the end, we asked for a glass of Sauternes for dessert, and they poured her a full glass. Like I'm expecting, like in the U.S. and elsewhere, you get 2 to 3 ounces maybe. They poured her like 6 ounces of Sauternes for a full glass, and we're like, oh my God, how are we going to drink all this? It's going to weigh down our palate. But it really didn't. And that's one of the beauty, I think, of Sauternes, is that kind of lightness. But on the complete opposite, I would never want to drink, as delicious as this is, I would never want to drink 6 ounces of this, because it would be way too heavy with all that glycerol. So think about that mouthfeel and body when you have this wine. And I said for quality, very good to outstanding. With that, I mean, all that complexity, without a doubt. And usually premium priced on this. They can certainly get super premium. When you're getting more to like the Essentia, that's really, really super premium. But Tokaji is relatively undervalued, so it doesn't jump as much as price when it really should for its quality. Last thing I just want to leave you guys here, just a couple tidbits about things that you might expect in a flight. And this is based on looking at past exam wines. Now, nobody knows what's going to be on an exam. Only the examiners do. Anybody that tells you they know what's going to be on the exam is probably lying to you. And they're just making guesses like everybody else. But it is somewhat worthwhile to look at past exam wines, which there's various sources on the internet that kind of have listings on them. So, of course, you are taking for credit that those listings are accurate, but it is helpful. And so, as I pointed out earlier, Tokaji tends to pop up frequently on that last flight 4, that mixed bag. Sauternes likes to pop up on a Semillon grape flight. Like that happened, it's been a little while since I did a Semillon grape flight, but 2013. And it likes to also pop up on the Bordeaux flight. So like last time, it was January 2017 when it popped up, and it was paired with an Entre de Mer. So you had a white Bordeaux, and then also, I believe, a Saint Estèphe from the Médoc. So you had a red Bordeaux. So you have that flight, you have a sweet wine that has botrytis. That, with those characters there, the white Bordeaux, the red Bordeaux, and that makes Sauternes a pretty easy call. You're not going to confuse that with Tokaji. Riesling pops up all the time. The examiners love featuring Rieslings. More often, though, they do tend to feature more the dry styles. Sweets can come up. Some that have a little bit of botrytis can come up, but it's very rare to get the really, really big botrytis. So again, if you have a wine that's screaming botrytis, you're thinking more between Sauternes and definitely Tokaji. But Riesling, they did a grape flight January of this year, 2021, and also January 2018, so they love Riesling. My flight in May, when I took the exam, my regional flight was the Mosel. And so I had 3 different Rieslings, and, one that had some botrytis notes that came with it. Alsace, Riesling can definitely pop up with that. January 15, there was an Alsace flight. They tend not to feature, though, SGNs, the really, really botrytis version of Alsace Rieslings. The last time they featured an SGN, which are pretty expensive in a small bottle, so you just think of the logistics of shipping such a small quantity of wine, so many of those bottles, to all the different exam sites. It kind of makes sense why SGN doesn't pop up too much. The last time they did that was 2012, and it was actually a Pinot Gris SGN on that. So again, if I'm in a test and I have, for the diploma exam, D3 is the one that I'm referencing these for, and I have a wine, it's probably going to be that last mixed bag flight 4, and I've got a wine, it's got a deep color, It's got dried fruit. It's got botrytis notes. Being a betting woman, I would probably bet towards Tokaji. Unless there was things that steered me towards Sauternes, like the high alcohol, tropical fruit, and surprisingly lightness in the mouthfeel for something that's got sweetness and richness. That would be my take. So that is it. I will let you guys go. As I mentioned in the post, I'm not going to do a Mr. Grape, a geeky one today. I will definitely do it tomorrow, I promise. But I got to work on our Elevage wine coaching website. So, guys, take care.